Welcome to the Basketball Show podcast edition on the Stingray Network. I'm your host, Paul Serve. Thanks for making time to join us today. Connor's with us, and of course, we have Brian Swain back. Brian went AWOL on us last week. We didn't know where he was, and we're glad we tracked you down again, Brian.
I have been found.
So we have a great show today. Just, I say that every week because you know what? That's what we have every week. So I'm not going to in any way be modest about this, but today is just fantastic. We have our poll question. Brian, what are we asking folks to think about today?
Yeah, you can head on over to basketball_show on Twitter, or X, as it's now more commonly known, the basketball_show, and cast your vote. We're asking what has been the most exciting series of the second round of the NBA playoffs so far. You got all four choices in there on the Eastern Conference, of course. It's the Knicks and Pacers and the Celtics and Cavs. And in the West, we have the Mavs playing the Thunder and the T-Wolves playing the Nuggets.
Great questions. Great questions. Well, Connor, I can imagine you probably weren't watching basketball last night.
Yeah, guilty. I have to confess to that one. There was a little other thing going on last night in the city. So
yeah, a little bit.
The attention was pulled away a little bit, but definitely got a chance to check out the highlights, and good to see a couple teams extending their series at least one more game. I was not quite ready to count out the Nuggets. Just with the talent that they have, Joker showed up. Pacers, I was a little bit more unsure about, but Tyrese Halliburton, what a performance by him to help extend it a little bit longer. And they always say you're not out of it till you lose at home, right? And the Pacers got the job done where it matters.
They certainly do, and I think we have to give a shout out to Canadian Ryan Nembhard for hitting a 35 to 40-foot shot. Caitlin Clark-esque. Now, we're not even saying Steph Curry anymore. We're comparing NBA players to Caitlin Clark and the distance they shoot from. But, the Pacers had a great win last night. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of topics in this first segment. But, Brian, I'm going to go to you. What was your impression of the Cavalier victory over the Celtics? Is this something that's just another blip for the Celtics in the inevitable run that they're going to make to the NBA Finals? Or is there something more sinister at play here that people that are Celtics fans should be a little bit concerned about?
I think both can be true, Paul. It probably is a blip because, to be honest, they don't have that difficult of a road to the NBA Finals with who they are facing and will potentially face in the next round in the East relative to who they could have had to come up against in the West. But at the same time, I would be concerned. I mean, this is a team that just continues to play .500 basketball at home in the playoffs over the last few seasons. You and I were talking yesterday, Paul, and I said that every time we think this team has turned a corner and learned a lesson from their past and seem to have set a foot forward in a new direction, they go out and they have a game like they did on Thursday, and it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of thing with this team. And I mean, they shouldn't have a problem getting by the Cavs. They may turn around and blow them out the next 3 games, just like they did with Miami, and wrap this thing up. And then we'll come right out again in the next round, and they have the same kind of problems. So I think it's both, and I think it's kind of a bad thing for the Celtics in the sense that they don't have that stiff of a competition in the East, because they're allowed to get away with this stuff time and time and time again. And if they were facing whoever you want to throw out there, the Nuggets in a 7-game series, Thunder, T-Wolves, maybe even throw the Mavs in there, they might not get away with this kind of stuff that they're able to get away with against last round against, an undermanned Heat and now against the Cavs.
No, I think that's a good summary. The big question that is yet to be answered by the Celtics is, are they built to win a 7-game series deep into the playoffs? Is this the kind of team? And here's the problem that I see with the Celtics. They are the quintessential live by the sword, die by the sword, 3-point shooting team right now. And I don't know that they can beat you in a grind out game that a lot of teams are going to try to get them to play in. And I think that is the question to me. And also the team character. And until they win, everybody's going to ask that question. Does this team have the mentality to win? Is Jason Tatum the kind of player that can put a franchise on his back and carry them through, even with a great player like Jaylen Brown as his running mate. So it will be intriguing, but they're not the only one in the playoffs right now. They're not the only I guess conundrum that we're watching that we're watching unfold. Timberwolves, I think everybody was a lot of people in the media, in the public are saying, the Timberwolves are just unstoppable right now. They just can't be touched. Like, look at the way they're handling Denver. And I had a great conversation yesterday with Kevin Carius here on Sports 1440, and one of my comments to Kevin was, let's see how the Timberwolves respond when they're not playing great and the other team is playing better. And Brendan Malone certainly read the riot act to the Nuggets, and when they came out last night, you could tell that the Nuggets were in a completely different mindset. There wasn't going to be any tossing by Jamal Murray from the bench into the middle of the fray, which, by the way, $100,000 fine and no suspension for that, which could have definitely injured a player. The way that happened is that's a gift. So I'm sure that the Nuggets are sending Adam Silver a thank you card for that one, because honestly, he should have been suspended. Just like Patrick Beverley, and you and I were touching on this yesterday. The suspension he had is ridiculous for what he did, the antics he did in public and then in the locker room with the female reporter. That should have been a massive suspension for both of those actions. I mean, he's firing a ball back to a senior citizen who's just trying to toss the ball back to him. Just unacceptable behavior. But jumping back to Jamal's tossing the ice bag into the middle of the court. I've never seen that before. And to think that wouldn't result in a suspension. And I'm a big Jamal Murray fan, and I'm hoping he's starting for Canada this summer in the Olympics. But you just can't have that, and that can't go unpunished by just a dollar sign.
Yeah, that's pretty inexcusable. I'm a big Jamal Murray fan too, Paul, but that one is that was just pretty ugly, and that was really dangerous. Anyone steps on that, he packed the wrong way, and it could have been one of his own teammates that could have easily gotten hurt. And you think, what happens if a fan throws something on the court from the stands? I mean, they're getting ejected
for life.
So I think we'll try not to get into this on a side tangent here, Paul, but just real quick, I mean, I think overall this is a sign of, and you can read into it whatever you want, but Adam Silver, there's a pattern here of him going really light on players in terms of when doling out punishment. There's the Jamal Murray example, the Patrick Beverley example. I even think back to the Draymond Green incident just before Christmas there, where I think, I mean, he was gone for a while, but I still think he got off pretty easy. And
for what he
it
did,
it almost kind of seems like it's the inmates running the asylum here.
I agree with you about Adam Silver. I think I'm sure he's a brilliant man, and you can't argue. I guess nothing succeeds like success, but there are certain stances that you have to take, and he's not taking them. I agree with you. I think he's soft, and I think I don't think that's great for the league, because I think then it encourages other outbursts, and how are you going to get tougher in those situations? You're listening to the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Paul Sir, along with Brian Swain and Connor Halley. Before we go any further, we were talking about doing a poll question. Not a poll question. We've done the poll, but let's ask our fans about the WNBA, and let's get some feedback from them. As everyone should have heard, and if you haven't, the WNBA is coming to Canada. They're going to Toronto. To no one's surprise, I think what surprised all of us, though, is that they're going to be there in 2026, which is a quick turnaround. That's big for Canada. So we want to ask you a question, right, Brian? Yeah,
we'll throw this out there, and you can send in your messages on the Sports 1440 text line at 1-833-401-1440. Again, that is 1-833-401-1440. Tell us, what should be the name of the new Toronto WNBA expansion franchise? Again, so 1-833-401-1440. Let us know. We want to hear your serious suggestions, your goofy suggestions, whatever comes to mind. I've already seen about 50 or 60 ones floating around out there, and there's lots of good ones and some not so much. But it's going to be fun to see what this team is named. And okay, I deliberately didn't ask you this beforehand, Paul, because I wanted to react live on air What is your suggested name?
Oh, you're going to have to give me a little. I have given it literally zero thought. There's no thought. But in the last segment, I'll have a thought.
Okay. Okay. Well, how about, maybe we'll say that we can all give our names then in the last segment.
We'll all give it.
But let us know, and who knows, maybe your name will get picked.
And you'll get a free T-shirt, a free 3x3 T-shirt if your pick is selected. The WNBA game last Saturday night at Rogers was fantastic. Sellout crowd. And what I loved about it the most was two things. The enthusiasm for the game. Actually, there's a multiple of things. Enthusiasm for the game by the crowd. The involvement of the Edmonton Stingers in the production of the crowd, all the way from their dancers performing, their courtside announcer, Kale, the game announcer, Jacob, and then multiple promotions throughout the game for the Stingers. I thought that was great for that particular franchise, and that was a great community partnership. But I think it's safe to say what was, I think, most dynamic about it was nobody left until the end of the game. And it was a close game, but it's an exhibition game. Nobody left. And the fact that it was a sellout, the fact there was so much enthusiasm in the middle of hockey playoffs, I think what that would be demonstrative to me for the Oilers Entertainment Group was as huge, and it is huge, consumingly so, what hockey is in Edmonton. There's a lot of other people who like other sports, and basketball is right at the top of the heap. Wouldn't you agree, Brian?
Yeah, well, I think what it says is there's people who like both.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing it right now. There's people, you can get the sense just listening on this station to programming. There's people here that are into both sports. I think that's fantastic. It's not you don't have to be just a hockey fan or a basketball fan. You can be both and love both. And I thought it was just, I thought this was a chance for our city to kind of make a statement one way or the other. We could either say, yes, we are a basketball city, or for people who doubt that we may be a basketball city, we're just a hockey town, we could have confirmed those beliefs the other way had this not gone so well. And it couldn't have gone any better, and I think we've made a tremendous statement if there was any doubt, and I don't think we've had any, but to anybody else out there, that this is a town that loves basketball and supports it in all its different forms. And, I hope, and I'm sure it won't be long again before we'll have another game here.
I would hope so. And I know that the WNBA people that were here, the executives were here, were blown away. And Rogers is such a spectacular venue to play in. So you're at a world-class facility, one of the best, if not the best facilities.
It's actually too, Paul. I noticed this between this and the Raptors game a year and a half ago. It's actually a pretty good facility for basketball. The sightlines aren't that bad, I find, for basketball, for a hockey rink.
I agree with that, but I'm surprised you would say that, to be honest, because it's a great venue for basketball. It's not the Saddle Dome. When they had the Raptors there in 2016, that was a tough facility to watch basketball in. The sense of distance was even in the first deck. There was a sense of distance that from that era of stadium existed. Where this era of stadium with the higher seats at a more dramatic angle give you a real good viewing point. There really isn't a bad seat or an obstructed seat in the place. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's almost as if they built this to get an NBA franchise one day.
Jeez,
who knows?
Jeez, yeah. I know. I mean, one of the questions I was thinking of asking our fans as well is, could Edmonton support a WNBA franchise? I'm curious about that. I don't know that they could. But there are some nuances in that question that I think could be discussed.
How about this? And I think it's only a matter of time before we see some kind of form of a G League in the WNBA, and it might be 5 to 10 years away yet, but could Edmonton support whatever the WNBA equivalent of the G League would be?
100%. But one of the questions it begs is, if they run at the same time as the CEBL, does that create a problem? So wouldn't that be a wonderful discussion to be having about more professional basketball in Canada? Brian, let's get an update on the poll. And then I think you have a question from a listener as well.
Yeah, so we'll maybe start with that. Of course, we've been asking on the Sports 1440 text line, 1-833-401-1440. Send us your suggested nicknames for the Toronto WNBA expansion franchise, and we'll get to that, some of those a little bit later. But yeah, we've got a question in from listener Brew Crew. Brew Crew, thanks for getting in touch with us, and he wants to know, Paul, is there something, this is a question for you, is there something in Caitlin Clark's mechanics that allows for such long-distance shooting?
Well, Brew Crew, pull up a chair. We'll spend the next 2 or 3 hours talking about this. But thanks for the question. And it's a great question, because when you see a generational talent, a game-changing talent like Caitlin Clark, as we saw with Steph Curry, who changes what people perceive as a good shooting distance, a sound shooting distance, you have to look at it and say, why this person and not other players? Here's what Caitlin Clark does so well, and this, of course, is what Curry does so well. Their shooting motion starts with their knees. What people oftentimes don't know about good shooters, great shooters, is your legs are every bit as important as your arms in terms of the shot itself. So the generation of power and force from your legs is the starting point. She always is on balance. And that doesn't always mean that she's squared up. And by squared up, I mean both feet flat on the ground facing the basket. If you watch a lot of Caitlin's deep logo shots, you'll see she's fading to her left somewhat. But her knees are always engaged and are always the source of the initial power. Then the second phase is she shoots on the way up. And so the ball is released with maximum force and control because she's generating the power that translates into her arms, and then it's her extension. You watch her shot, you watch her follow through. She has perfect extension on virtually every shot. And this is something that there's, I think, some confusion in the way players are taught how to shoot. And some shooting coaches, which I vehemently disagree with, teach the phone booth method, where the release of the shot is above the head and the follow-through is above the head. Whereas if you watch Caitlin shoot, her extension is more at about a 45-degree angle towards the basket, following through with her hand, and you'll see the ball release, her wrist snap, and her hand be fully extended downward as the ball releases. She gets perfect arch on the ball so that the ball doesn't always have to go through the middle of the basket and swish. But because of her backward rotation on the ball, she gets a lot of favorable rolls when it gets to the rim because her technique is so good. So, bottom line is knees, arms, extension towards the basket, follow through, and shooting the same way every time. And here's the deal with Caitlin Clark. How much time has she spent in the gym when nobody's watching, rehearsing this? Day after day, hour after hour, year after year. There's no shortcuts to becoming a great shooter from any distance, much less what she's done. And then the incorporation of movements with the ball, handling the ball, practicing under pressure, shooting over extended arms. All of those factors add up to this individual changing the way women see themselves as shooters, but men as well. She's a reaffirmation of what Steph Curry has done. And she shows you don't have to be a hulking, strong male in order to be able to be an effective shooter from deep. Caitlin Clark, I really think, has revolutionized how people perceive shooting. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to walk into any gym and people are going to be hucking from the logo or from half court, and they're going to be clanking it off the backboard, endangering everybody around them. It's what you do, like I said, with what time you have, purposefully practicing perfect technique time after time after time. Great shooters are made when nobody's watching.
There you go. Awesome breakdown there, Paul. Thank you. Hopefully that answers your question, Brew Crew. Again, appreciate you for sending that in. And again, 1-833-401-1440. Let us know what should be the WNBA Toronto expansion franchise nickname. And also just get a quick poll update here before I throw it back over to you, Paul. The tied for the lead right now in what has been the most exciting series of the NBA playoffs second round. We've got the Thunder and the Mavericks, and the Knicks and Pacers are tied in the lead. You can cast your vote over on X at basketball_show. Again, that is basketball_show on X or Twitter.
You're listening to the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. I'm your host, Paul Sir, and I'm pleased to be joined with Delaney Gibb. Delaney, welcome to the show. I'm so pleased that you're able to join us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Delaney, I really don't know where to start, so I'm just going to start with the fact that you're from Raymond, Alberta. For
Yep.
people who know basketball, or sports rather, if they know sports, they know that Raymond, McGrath, Cardston form a triangle of small towns in southern Alberta that have a real storied history and such a tradition that really is rare anywhere, Delaney. Talk about your experience of growing up in a small town. I know you have deep roots there because of your family's longstanding part of the community. But talk about what it's like to grow up and play in Raymond.
Yeah, I think it's super special. Not very many places will you have your entire community supporting you and around you. And so I think just Raymond is such a sports crazy town. And so I've had so many supporters around me. So it's been amazing.
Now, Delaney, you had to be under, if not a lot of pressure, at least some pressure to consider transferring to a prep school or an academy out east. What made the decision to stay in Raymond work for you?
I mean, I just wanted kind of the normal high school experience, I guess. I love Raymond and I love Raymond High School. And so I didn't want to leave all of that behind. I also have a huge family here who all love me very much. And so I think I just wanted to stay home for as long as I could. Obviously, I figured that I would be playing away from home at the college level. And so I wanted to stay in high school and in the moment around my family as long as I could.
Well, first of all, on a personal level, Delaney, that's very admirable. And I think it's pretty safe to say something you will never regret for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about the experience of playing in Raymond, and not only playing in Raymond, but playing for your father as your coach. How was that?
Yeah, it was super special. And, I think that he knows all of my strengths. And so it was fun because he knows me so well that he's been a great coach for me. He knows when I'm slacking off and he'll kind of get on me for that. And so I think it's just something special that you don't see a lot when someone knows you so well and knows your strengths and weaknesses so well. And so he was able to help me exceed and, become who I am today.
I'm talking with Delaney Gibb, star of the Raymond High School Comets, the 4A provincial champions, here on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. So you're playing for your dad. Along with playing for your father, however, comes the dynamic on the team that you're playing for your father. How did your dad manage the team, knowing full well he's coaching his daughter, but making sure that all of the young women on your team had a great experience?
Yeah, I think something about my dad is that he cares so much about basketball and so much about excelling in that aspect, but he also cares about each girl individually. And so I think for our teams, it was super special just because he had watched most of the girls grow up and play since junior high level. And so for him, it was like with every girl on our team, not just me being his daughter, but every girl he had watched and kind of, known since they were younger. And so it's kind of a really cool aspect just that he, already kind of has relationships with all of these girls and knows their families and their parents and their grandparents.
Delaney, I have to tell you a personal story.
I saw your father play in the 4A provincial championship at the old gym at the University of Alberta against McGrath. And we were new to Alberta at that time. And I had heard these rumblings about these small towns in southern Alberta. And having grown up in a small town myself in the state of Iowa, I'm familiar with how popular a sport can be in a community when everybody embraces it. But I have to tell you, Delaney, I'd never seen anything quite like this. Not only was it the two small towns from southern Alberta playing for the 4A championship, but both of those schools could probably have played 1A or 2A, and they were beating all of the big 4A schools. But here's what amazes me, Delaney. That was 1987. That was 1988 rather. This is 2024, and you guys are still doing it. You still did that this year. What's the magic formula? Because here's my theory. If we can figure this out, we can bottle it and we can sell it and make an awful lot of money.
Yeah, I honestly I couldn't even tell you. I think it's just, I don't know. Like, I think Raymond's just so crazy about basketball and about sports. And I think having athletes that, since it's such a small community, like our high school team is interacting with so many younger kids. And so I think it kind of just inspires the younger kids to try and be like the older kids. And so from there, just because it's such a tight knit community that everyone knows each other and is interacting with each other. And so they just keep continuing to love basketball because they know the individuals and the players so much better.
I think if I could make this statement, I think that Raymond is the ultimate example of tradition in a community, that a small community year after year, decade after decade could achieve the kind of success with the belief, the support that you just articulated very nicely, Delaney, that you have really found something special that everybody aspires to, but very few achieve. And I have such an enormous amount of respect for what Raymond, as well as Carson and McGrath, but particularly Raymond, have accomplished. And so kudos to you and everyone who came before you. Thank you. I'm talking to Delaney Gibb from Raymond, Alberta. She was on the team that won the 4A championship. Now, was that a 2 in a row or 3 in a row, Delaney?
It was the 3rd time in a row.
That's what I thought. I thought it was a three-peat. So we have a three-peat 4A champion, Raymond, Alberta, and you're listening to the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Okay, Delaney, let's talk about your experiences beyond Alberta. I know your father, your family have done a lot to support you, to get you to teams, to tournaments, to events down in the United States to give you both experiences and exposure. Talk about that process, please.
Yeah, so I think my exposure in the United States, at least, really skyrocketed during COVID. When school was shut down here in Raymond and all of Alberta, we had the opportunity to move down to Utah in the States. My mom's American, and so me and all of my siblings are dual citizens, and so we packed up and we moved to Utah for the school year. And so from there, I was able to play on a 5A team, high school team, and I played varsity. And so that was the first time that I'd played varsity basketball. And so it was quite the experience. And then from there, I was able to play on a shoe circuit team in the Adidas circuit. And so that AAU team is where Division I coaches were able to first see me and kind of start recruiting me from there.
And recruit you, they did. You have settled on, I guess, to no surprise from the outside looking in, on Brigham Young University, BYU. Yes. And everybody, I think, who's aware of Raymond know it's a large LDS, Latter-day Saint Mormon population. Yeah. BYU is the flagship school of the Mormon Church. I think it's fair to say. Mm-hmm. So you're going to play in BYU. What was it about BYU, other than I know it's much, much more than just your church and your faith. Yeah. Obviously, there had to be a lot more to the decision. What ultimately led you to that choice?
Yeah, I think the thing about BYU is when I was there, it was a place where I felt very comfortable and where I knew that I was going to be able to be my best version of myself on and off the court. The coaches believe in me so much, and so I think that's really important as an athlete and as a human being. And then I also know, like, I have teammates and girls that I know really well and I'm really good friends with that have committed there and that were there. And so I think just everything leading up to it just gave me so much confidence knowing that it's somewhere where I'm going to be able to succeed and become a great basketball player, but also just become the best version of myself off the court as well.
Well, as I understand it, Delaney, there's another, not just Albertan, but Albertan from just down the road.
Yep.
That will be joining you there as well.
Yeah, it's sweet. Hattie's going to be joining me, and so I'm super excited about that.
And for those that don't know, Hattie's from McGrath, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
And she played at the University of Buffalo and is transferring to BYU. So, Hattie, we will have not just two Albertans, like I mentioned, but two Albertans within a stone's throw of each other playing for the Cougars. There's one other aspect to your game that I'd like to touch on, if I could, Delaney.
Okay.
And that is playing for the Canada basketball and the national team program. What have your experiences been like thus far? And what are your ultimate goals and aspirations for national team play?
Yeah, so far I've had, 3 summers with playing on Team Canada, and all have been super fun. It's so great to be able to represent my country and my community, but also just meet some of the top Canadian athletes in my age group and to be able to play with them and create relationships. Last year we actually got a bronze medal at the U19 FIBA World Cup in Spain. So that was a special feeling because it's always great to be able to bring home some hardware for Canada. And then as far as goals and aspirations, I think I've always wanted to be an Olympic athlete. And so I'm kind of at the point now where I'm too old for like the U17, U19, U16 age groups. And so the step moving forward for me, moving forward, I'm now looking at like senior national team and the Olympic team. And so my goal and my hope is to go to college and be prepared to, help the senior national team and potentially be able to play in an Olympic.
Well, Delaney, I'm not a gambler, but if I were, I would not bet against you. Your determination combined with the fact that you work extremely hard and that you're really good, makes me think that you're going to have every opportunity to achieve that goal. Delaney Gibb, we wish you nothing but success, moving forward. I have to say from my own personal perspective, but I think I speak on behalf of everyone. We're so pleased and proud that you made the decision to stay at home, to play for your community, to play for your high school, and make it the special experience that you did. And now moving forward onto the bigger stage, we wish you nothing but success in carrying that forward.
Thank you.
Delaney Gibb, what a special young lady. All right, Brian, what do we got? Let's talk poll.
Yeah, the poll over on basketball_show on X, we're asking what has been the most exciting series of the NBA playoffs, second round so far, and pulling in front now with 57% of the vote is Knicks Pacers, second is Thunder Mavericks at 28%. I'm a little bit biased, Paul, but I definitely been the Knicks Pacers for me, and I think anybody, whether you have a dog in that fight or not, that has been great theater so far.
It really has, and dramatic theater last night for sure. Well, Thank you, everybody. Remember, 833-401-1440 for your name for the Toronto WNBA franchise. Vote in our poll. We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll have Toronto Suns' Ryan Wolstat with us here to talk about the Toronto WNBA franchise and what is the future plans for the Toronto Raptors. You're listening to The Basketball Show on Sports 1440. I am really pleased to welcome back to the show, after not talking with him for about 4 years, Ryan Wolstat from the Toronto Sun. Ryan, it's really great to talk to you again.
Yeah, same here.
So, Ryan, let's start with your votes for the postseason awards for the NBA. You released your votes publicly. You voted for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Obviously, Jokic won. Talk about the rationale behind your pick and why you think that Shai was the right choice.
Yeah, first I just started. I think it should, it's everyone's choice whether they want to be public or not, but I think there's a lot weighing on these awards, as I wrote in the explainer piece. So I think it's good to be transparent, and I believe the NBA eventually does release all the results. I'm not 100% on it, but I think it's just good to maybe get ahead of it, especially if you're doing maybe a somewhat controversial pick that some might not agree with. So I just like to, be transparent that way. And basically I just thought Shai was my pick all throughout the season, and I'm not going to penalize him just because maybe he got banged up at the end and Jokic had a really great finish. I just think maybe the advanced stats, like they always are, like Jokic is the best player on the planet. I don't think there's a lot of arguing about that, and he probably should have won last year over Embiid. But the award doesn't always go to the best player in the league. I mean, different people analyze it differently, how MVP should be, like how much team should come into it, and I think part of it is the team, and the truth is Shai led the team from 10th last year to first in the West, which is by far the better conference, like really great competition, and he was the main reason. Averaged over 30 points a game again, tied for the lead in steals. Like he was really great at both ends of the floor, one of the best clutch players in the league. I think he finished third in that voting. I think I had him third as well, behind Steph Curry and DeMar DeRozan. So I just think if you look at the two-way impact, like he's a better defender than Jokic, who granted is better than most people think he is defensively. And they're not that far apart offensively because they're both, two of the most insanely talented offensive players on the planet. So I think all that went into my thinking, and the team angle, I think, should come into play for MVP. It has in past years many, many times. Like, what's the best story if it's neck and neck? I mean, obviously, if one guy's like way better and way ahead, then I think it's the obvious choice. But I think the storyline should come into play as well. So basically, for all those reasons, I think Shai was a viable choice. And I mean, Luka Doncic wasn't too bad either, just a tiny bit behind those guys.
Well, the top three are incredible players, and I think you, in particular for Shai and for Nikola, you can make a case for either, and yeah. For me, it really comes down to splitting hairs. But your points are compelling. Without Gilgeous-Alexander, what kind of team are the Thunder? They're the under 500 team. He is the team, and I think that was clearly on display the other night. The way Dallas defended the other players. And they kind of did the old Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell thing of let the best player get his points, but take away his assists. And even though his numbers were still pretty good on the assist side, the rest of the players were pressured so much that it really came down to, could Shai carry the team on his shoulders? And with Luka having a better game, he just wasn't able to do that.
And yeah, I don't want to take away from the supporting cast because he did get help. He got Chet Holmgren this year. And
for sure.
Some other young guys, and Jalen Williams took a step forward. But the truth is, the Nuggets are the defending NBA champions. They have Jamal Murray. Everyone in Canada knows, and in the world now knows how good that guy is. Aaron Gordon's a really good player. They have a bunch of other, Michael Porter Jr. is a great player. They've got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope can defend, great defenders everywhere. Like, they're a really good team, and that's not to say the Thunder isn't, but I think it would be safe to say that Jokic does have more help. So to me, that's part of it as well. And we've seen it so many times, like you said, when SGA, in the clutch, he's going to make the right play, whatever it is. And we saw it for Canada. We've seen it for OKC. And Jokic will do it too, but he does have more help. And he is way bigger than everyone too, which gives him an advantage. Not that we should hold that against him. I just think what Shai does is just it's at a deserving level.
It really is, and your points are well taken. But now, Ryan, let's jump into the big story from the last couple of days, and that's the arrival of the WNBA in Toronto. Are you surprised that it happened what to the public would seem rather quickly? That's question number one. Number two, I guess what surprised me, it's not surprising that Toronto got a WNBA franchise. I am surprised that they're going to start playing in 2026. What are your thoughts on this?
It's not too surprising to me because it was close before until, a lot of the rumors came out that Edward Rogers was really against it, and maybe, I'm not sure if I thought I heard something about Bell as well. Maybe it wasn't totally the members of MLSE. The board weren't, like, everyone else was on board, but maybe the telecoms weren't as supportive because they weren't sure if it was going to be, they're all about money and the profit above all. Which is their right. And maybe some of the other more human faces on the MLSE board are thinking long-term and what it would mean for basketball in this country and Toronto and everywhere and for young women all around this country. So they were all for it. So I'm not surprised that Larry Tannenbaum, who's been one of the biggest boosters of basketball in this country for 30, 40 years now. Like he was originally the guy that sent the NBA $1 million unsolicited or $100,000, whatever it was, to say, I want a basketball team in Toronto. And he didn't get it the first time, but he made sure he got it when the Maple Leafs joined up with the Raptors. And he loves the game. Some think he loves it more than any other sport. So it's not surprising at all that he's seen the wave of women's basketball after seeing, riding the wave of Vince Carter and the original Raptors and then the championship Raptors and just seeing how, and now all the great Canadians like Shea and Jamal Murray in the league. I'm not surprised at all that he made a big move to get it done after his other corporate partners wouldn't.
Well, and I think to your point, Ryan, Tannenbaum is like the pillar that we have professional basketball built on in this country. Mm-hmm. So once again, we have to offer him our deep gratitude for having the vision and the courage and the willingness to spend his hard-earned money and bring other partners in to bring women's basketball to Canada. But my goodness, if anybody was opposed to bringing WNBA to Canada after this year for women's basketball, boy, you really have to ask some serious questions about judgment because the numbers are staggering. And yes, it's going to be interesting because no matter what people say, it still comes down to the impact Caitlin Clark had on the game to bring attention to it. But that doesn't mean that the attention isn't going to spread out as it continues to appear to do so in terms of the popularity of the women's game. Because, here's my thought. We watched the game last weekend here in Edmonton with the WNBA. Mm-hmm. The quality of basketball in the WNBA compared to even 10 years ago is unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I saw it a year ago in May in Toronto, the first game in Canada, when Bridget Carleton and Natalie Achonwa were in town with Minnesota and Chicago playing, and just a great environment, sold out. I've never seen merchandise sell out that quickly. Like, everyone was wearing WNBA merchandise. And it was just great to see, families, young women everywhere, older women, whatever, and men too, just jumping on board on the wave. And I could tell then, that's why it was even, you say, how could anyone in the past year be against it? But even after that, I can't believe they were nah, this isn't going to work. It's kind of crazy to me after covering that moment. But I'm just glad that it is happening now and that, it's going to be the start of something big and it's going to inspire a lot of people. And I don't think it's a fad at all. I know that's sometimes the argument, women's sports just a fad. It's just a thing right now with the PWHL as well. But I don't think so at all. And I think people that think that way are going to be proven wrong in the long run.
Well, I think they are. We're talking to Ryan Wolstat of the Toronto Sun here on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. I think the wave is real, and I think it has depth and substance. And one of the statistics and studies that I just read was that 17 million Canadians say they really want to watch women's sports. Mm-hmm. It's fun to watch. It's good basketball. We've had a real privilege here in Edmonton, Ryan, by being the home of the women's Olympic team since 2013. Absolutely. And the phrase I've always coined is it's unbelievably great fundamental horizontal basketball. And you say that now because most of the WNBA still is played below the rim, although the athleticism continues to accelerate at a staggering pace. But it's the skills that these women have blended with their athleticism that makes the game so compelling. And again, referring to our game last Saturday, as you saw a year ago, the quality of basketball is so high, and the weak links that used to be on the court, and I akin it to back in the NBA in the 80s and 90s, is that you saw a lot of great players, but the depth of talent isn't anything like it is today across the board. That same principle holds true in women's sport. There's so many good players, and even the players that aren't stars are technically really sound.
And yeah, that's a good point, Paul. Like, the NBA was able to eventually keep expanding and got a lot bigger because of the international boom that the Dream Team kind of started. And I think you're starting to see that now, and that's why a lot of the players in WNBA have been kind of begging for expansion teams, because they're cutting really good players now. And like you said, that wasn't the case maybe 10 years ago, and definitely when the league started. Now they're at the point where really good players don't make teams. And another thing is, there's a lot of really good players that people are way more aware of. This is also what I think will help boost the popularity of the league, is where the NCAA men's side has lost a lot of the allure because guys aren't staying in school 3-4 years, even 2 years most of the time, the way they used to back in the day. And when March Madness was at its biggest, it's because people knew who these guys were. And now Zach Edey is, it's an anomaly. It's not a common thing. And I think the different thing is in the women's game, they're still staying for their whole time in college, and people are really getting to know them. So I think that's a big difference as well.
I think, and that's a great point, because bluntly, the men's tournament was far less interesting than the women's tournament this year. And there was a game. Who did Duke play when they lost? I can't remember, but whoever they played, that game was unwatchable. That was not a Duke basketball team that I would never have watched that game turning on and say, oh, yeah, that's Duke. That's the way they play. It was awful basketball. And there were some great games in the men's tournament, but the names, they just aren't there. The star power just isn't there. And now with the with the corral gates being thrown wide open, and all the horses are stampeding to the next college, and you've got guys playing 4 schools in 4 years, it's just not a recipe for familiarity and success and building up stars. And so far, the women, and we had a guest on who was an ESPN, a lady ESPN broadcaster, and she said, I just hope the women don't kill the goose that laid the golden egg and get away from what's making it so compelling right now. Ryan, I got to jump to the Raptors, and that's not an easy topic to jump to. I think it's safe to say, if you take a step back, you have to look at injuries this year as the dominant factor in that horrific stretch run that they had. Certainly, you can put some forgiveness in there. But to me, and this is just my commentary, Ryan, the Siakam deal is unacceptable. The way that was handled and what they got for what they gave up. But the Raptors' direction, you're right in the thick of it. You're in the center of the universe. What is your opinion about the direction of this franchise right now?
Well, I think like a lot of people who cover the team on a day-to-day basis, we agree that they moved too late on these moves. They should have been ahead of the curve. They weren't as close as they thought they were. And, hockey fans in Toronto are seeing it every year with the Leafs running it back every year and losing. They could have learned from their corporate brothers. They did not. They ran it back too long, and they stuck with what wasn't working for too long and paid the price. Now, they got lucky. They did quite well in the OG Anunoby deal, getting Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and the 31st pick of this draft coming up. But like you said, the Siakam deal was just horrendous, just awful, truly awful. I know they were in a hard spot because not a lot of teams want to give him the full max that Indy's going to give him, but, it's still not nearly enough for one of the best players you've ever produced as your franchise, and a still really, really good player. So that's going to set them back. They should have moved players out earlier, and now they didn't. So actually, it's hard to say what their direction is, because tomorrow is a massive, massive day in the history of the franchise. That is going to determine a lot of what's going to happen, because their pick is top 6 protected. If not, if they fall right now, they're in 6th spot. They have the 6th worst record, but they actually have a better chance of falling and losing the pick to the Spurs from the Jakob Poeltl deal. And if that happens, if they do lose the pick, then they're free to do whatever they want next year. They can tank. They can try to get a Cooper Flagger, all these other guys at the top of the draft next year that are supposed to be really good. But if they keep the pick, or if they move up or any of that, then they're going to owe the Spurs that pick next year, and so tanking will be off the table. So it's a big moment where they can until tomorrow happens, they won't really know which way they can go, unless they wanted to say, whatever, we're going to tank even if we don't have the pick, which wouldn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, it could go either way. They are lucky in the sense that it's not a full rebuild. They've got a top dog or pretty close to it in Scotty Barnes. They've got Emmanuel Quickly, who looks like a really promising player. RJ Barrett, Grady Dick looks like a viable starter for a long time. And then they got some other picks on the way and some flexibility. So they're not totally lost, but I do think they're fully going to be in retool phase, and it kind of depends on what happens at the lottery, just how much they do it. Like, are they going to just, will they go back and trade Pirtle again to get some future assets since he's kind of older than the other guys? Like, what are they going to do with Bruce Brown, Gary Trent? It's all kind of up in the air, and a lot of it depends on, if they move up to the top 3. I know it's not a super draft or anything, but they could get a pretty important piece that might speed things along. But if they lose the pick, then I think it's more likely that Masai Ujiri does what he's wanted to do for a long time and kind of tear it down a little bit, knowing that that's how they're going to compete long term.
Ryan, it's Brian. How you doing?
Good.
I got to ask, following up on that, what should Raptors fans be hoping happens tomorrow in the lottery?
That is something I've been weighing myself, wondering, and I've asked some friends of mine who are big Raptor fans since day one, and like I said, it's like this draft is so uncertain, but I think if you have a shot at a top 3 pick, you might not get that again. I personally don't think they're going to be bad enough to be back in this mix next year, even though it's a better draft. So I think they should be hoping that they move up into the top 3 or even 4, or just lose it entirely. I don't know at 5 and 6. I know it's not a huge difference, but the odds of finding someone really good there, I don't love. So I think the best thing for them would be to move up, preferably to first, and to get a really important piece to move them forward. And if not, losing the pick isn't the worst thing, but like I said, I don't think they're going to be bad enough with Barnes, unless Barnes gets hurt. With Barnes and Quickly are already that's already better than Detroit and Charlotte are most years, and maybe some other teams. So I don't know. I think best case, obviously, it would be fun to win the lottery, and it would be nice to get a high-level talent, even if maybe there's no Victor Wembanyama or even Paolo Banchero caliber guy at the top this year.
Ryan Wolstat, thanks so much for joining us. It's really great to talk to you again, and we look forward to having you back on the show real soon. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the NBA playoffs, and as all things unfold with the WNBA franchise as well.
Yep, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me.
Very pleased to be joined by an old friend, Bill Wennington. And for those who don't know Bill, number one, shame on you. But number two, member of 3 NBA championships back in the 90s with the Chicago Bulls, and longtime Chicago Bulls radio analyst. And Bill, thanks so much for joining me today.
Paul, pleasure to be on with you, and it's great to see you again for the few moments we were able to see each other.
Well, Bill, let's talk about, let's start with this. You've been a broadcaster with the Bulls on radio for over 20 years now. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I just finished my 21st year, and it's shocking. I thought I had a great professional basketball career at 15 years, but obviously now I've been doing this 6 years longer than that. So if you were talking to my 12th grade English teacher, he wouldn't believe it.
Well, Bill, though, I would have to attach the often used phrase, living the dream. Play in the NBA for 15, broadcast for 21. A lot of people would love to be able to put that on their resume.
It's been absolutely fantastic. Obviously, it hasn't been easy, as you know, with radio.
Of course.
It's very competitive, and I've been broadcasting with Chuck Swirsky for the Bulls now. Well, Chuck and I have been working together for 16 years. And I tell people right now there's roughly 450 NBA players in the NBA. There's less than 100 NBA broadcasters. What's harder to do?
That's a small pool.
Yes, very, very small.
You know what, Bill? I was going to say this towards the end of the show, but I'm going to use your referring to Chuck Swirsky and your working together for so long, and segue right into the fact that one of the reasons I was inspired to call you, I was going to call you anyway for my show, but it expedited the process, is when I saw you and Chuck on a Zoom call for the upcoming CEBL season. Chuck, I know last year was doing work for the CEBL, And lo and behold, here's Bill Wennington. And I'm thinking, my God, this league continues to take big strides forward. Talk about what you're going to be doing with the CEBL this year.
Well, I'm going to be broadcasting 2 games. One, obviously, well, not obviously if you don't know me, then in Montreal, where I was born and grew up. So it'll be a lot of fun for me to go back there. That'll be on June 5th, and it'll be on, I believe, TSN. And then I'll also do a Niagara game in July. I believe I'm working with Rob Black in that game and Chuck Swirsky in the Montreal game. And we're going to have fun. I don't know a whole lot about the league. I haven't started to do my homework yet. I do know that there's obviously it's a Canadian league made by Canadians. 73% of the league last year was Canadian. And it's a great place for basketball players from really all over the world, but especially Canada, to go and work on their talents and get some recognition and make a little bit of money playing a game that they love.
Well, I think you've summarized a great deal about the league. I've had the privilege and opportunity to do the broadcasts for the Edmonton team this will be my 6th year. Do all 6 years of the Edmonton Stinger franchise. I think, Bill, when you were growing up as a young player, the fact was at that time Canadians weren't actively recruited. There were certainly Canadians playing in the NCAA, but they weren't actively recruited like American players were. You, of course, were recruited, went and had a phenomenal career at St. John's, and going on to your 15-year stint in the NBA as a player. But for the CEBL, I always use the descriptor that the roadside is littered with the white crosses of failed minor league basketball leagues in the U.S. and Canada. A lot of attempts have been made, but the CEBL has had the financial backing and the vision to keep this moving forward. And the fact that you and others of note and notoriety are coming in at different contributions to the league speaks really well of the trend that this is taking in Canada.
I really believe it is. And you talk about the growth of basketball in Canada. When I was playing or growing up in Montreal, the NBA, first of all, wasn't as big as it is now. And I remember watching a couple of games on TV as a kid, but not a lot because it wasn't a big sport in Montreal. And I know Leo Rowton's a couple of years older than me, went to Syracuse. And while I was playing, Mike Smrek, who I played with on the Olympic team, same age as me, went to Niagara, and Danny Mahar went to Duke. I know UVic had a huge contingency and was playing really well with Ken Shields as the coach.
Absolutely.
And doing really well. But other than that, there really weren't a lot of players playing the game of basketball. And what I think Canada and all the guys have done really well is promote the game. And now you had in the NBA, the second most nationality in the league was Canada. And I want to say it was 23 Canadians in the NBA last season. My numbers aren't exact, but it was. Well,
I think you're real close. You're real close, Bill.
Yeah. But it's growing so much, and everyone that has played that I know and recall, especially with the Canadian Olympic team and the alumni, they're doing their best to promote the game, and especially all over the world, but especially in Canada, because that's really where it starts. If you want the game to grow, you have to get young people involved, at least watching the game. And that's really, to circle back, that's what the CEBL is doing. It's giving Canadians an opportunity to watch their own and enjoy a game that I think is the best game in the world, that obviously I've been playing all my life or being a part of all my life. So it really is a great way to give back. And for me, it's an easy way to give back because I get to talk about a game I love and watch players that are so much more athletic than I could ever dream of being. And it's just a lot of fun.
I'm talking with Bill Wennington. Bill is the radio voice of the Chicago Bulls and also had a tremendous career with the Chicago Bulls, winning 3 NBA championships. He's joining me on the basketball show on Sports 1440. Bill, I want to go down that lane that you just opened up. Players in the NBA now. Watching last night, the Dallas Mavericks, this is just a one-off. We can talk for a long, long time about the NBA playoffs. But watching the Dallas Mavericks last night play against Gilgeous-Alexander and OKC, Gilgeous-Alexander is, to me, he's almost like the new version of the Terminator.
Yes.
Long, athletic, extremely quick, skill set that's off the charts, shoots the three. His mid-range game is crafty. His footwork's incredible. He finishes at the rim and he defends. What's your perspective right now on not just Shea, but also just the overall quality of play, quality of player in the NBA today?
Well, Shea is an elite player, and obviously, especially earlier on in the season, he was talks of MVP. His name was being brought up at the beginning of the season. He was playing so well and what Oklahoma City was doing. And what he does and how he can score, he can carry his team and make them good. But I was watching game one after they won, and he was being interviewed after the game, and he speaks so highly of the game and his teammates and just the style that they play. And that's what, in my mind, makes him really special, because he understands what he can do and he knows it and he works on it, but he also appreciates and knows what his teammates do and what they represent for him to be successful. So I know they had a little hiccup last night, but they're a young team. That's going to happen, and they'll come back and figure things out in Dallas. But I love to watch him play, and he has kind of set the standard. For a while, it was a long time ago, it was me, and then Steve Nash comes into the game and raises the bar even more, and Shea has done that now even more so. So it's really fun for me as a Canadian to see these guys come in and work on their craft and be in the league, the top of the NBA, which is the best in the world. So really fun for me to watch.
It's an intriguing possibility of what could happen in Paris this summer for both the men and the women. But let's just focus on the men as this is part of our conversation. If it were to happen, a backcourt of Jamal Murray and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, that's pretty tough to say there's any other better backcourt in the world.
I would agree with that. I mean, they play so well, and when they're on, they're unstoppable. I mean, they both can create and make shots and score really well, and they're both willing defenders. So, you already talked about Shea being a great defender, and Jamal's very willing to get out there and carry his load at both ends of the floor. So it would be special. Obviously, last summer was really great, but I mean, 2 years ago when they won the championship. But if they could medal, it would be phenomenal. And really, there were some people thinking that they could be good enough to gold medal. So it's going to be a fun summer. And, the Olympics are always a great game. I tell everyone that, having been part of the 1984 Olympics and trying to get into the 92 Olympics in the Tournament of the Americas, but falling short, it's one of the greatest things you can do as a player to represent your country and to play with the best in your country. It's so much fun. It's hard to explain. It's, winning NBA championships and going to the Final Four in college and high school, state championships wins. The Olympic experience is one of the best in my life and some of the fondest memories I have, and working with those guys, because it really takes it to a different level, because there's so much more involved, and it's not a business. It's just pride for the game and your country and the guys that you're playing with to do the right things and win games. So It's a lot of fun, and I understand in the NBA, guys, they go in and they play for years and years, and it becomes lackluster to represent your country. But it's a shame they feel that way, because it really is a fantastic opportunity, and being there and understanding that you're with the best of the world, of every country represented there, it means so much.
Bill Wennington, radio analyst for the Chicago Bulls, 3-time NBA champion with the Chicago Bulls, joining me on the basketball show. Bill, I find it I really enjoyed that last summation of the Olympic experience and what it meant to you and what you believe it could or should mean to everyone. I think a bit of that Olympic spirit certainly has permeated the U.S. team now, because you've got LeBron and KD and really Steph Curry willing to step out and play for their country again, as they're in the twilight of their career, although LeBron could be playing 10 years from now, God only knows. But I think, and in Canada, I think Canada basketball has done a great job under the leadership of Michael Bartlett and Roland Barrett of instilling in the men's game, and I've got lots of stories about the women's game because they've trained in Edmonton for a long time. But I think they really have gone at it the right way in terms of instilling pride in the players to encourage them to represent their country. And I think that spirit, which really was gone for quite a while in Canada, has come back. And now, to your point about having over 20 players in the NBA, some among the very, very best in the NBA, wanting to play for their country, represent their country. That bodes well for Canada this summer.
It really does. And Canada has done a great job. And I get it. It's difficult. And I really understand, because especially after an NBA season, 82 games, then you go into the playoffs. As a player, you need some downtime. But again, when I played in '84, I was still in college and went through the with St. John's and went through long seasons there, but not the NBA. In '92, it was I was playing in the NBA, and unfortunately we didn't make it, but you get through it and you find ways, and the motivation to play every single game. And I'm going to be honest. And I'm sure you could ask anyone on the U.S. when we won in '83 in Calgary, when you're standing on a podium and they're playing your national anthem, you goosebumps all over the hair. Well, I wish I still had hair on my head, but the hair on your head and the back of your neck raises up, and it's just. You can't explain that pride and that passion that you have for a game that you love and you're able to play, and you hear that national anthem. So, but Canada, to your point, has done a great job to get the interest back and get these guys to want to play. And they've worked really hard at it, because, as you said, for a while, it was difficult to get guys to commit to the summer to play, and because it's not easy. It's a huge time commitment, and then you don't just walk on the floor. I don't know if people know how difficult it is to actually play well as a team. You can't just walk on the floor and run plays. You got to work at it and understand the timing and the personalities and the skill set of every player on that team and how to work together.
Well, Bill, you've committed the cardinal sin. You said the '83 standing on the podium in Calgary. Now, for Edmontonians, that hurts.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that really hurts. So, do I have to come up with some insult about Quebec City versus Montreal now?
No, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. And you should know, because I know you were very instrumental in getting the women's Olympic team out there in Edmonton as well. To where you say they've been 5-6 years now.
Oh, no. They came in 2013. We've had them here for 11 years. They're going to be back in a couple of weeks to get ready for the Olympics. So Edmonton's, as you know, is a special basketball city with our history with the Edmonton Grads. Yep. Women's basketball, we just had a WNBA game here, sold out last Saturday night. We're rocking and rolling here. in good old Alberta. But Bill Wennington, it has been a real pleasure to reconnect with you. Thank you so much for your time. You spent a lot of time with me today. It's been a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440.
Thank you, Paul.
Brian, where are we at with our poll?
The Knicks Pacers is running away with it. Is the question, of course, was we had it on Twitter at basketball_show. What has been the most exciting series of the NBA playoffs second round? And the overwhelming favorite is Knicks Pacers, which, as we talked about a little bit earlier, I think most people would have to say that all the games have gone down to the wire. You've had everything. You've had clutch shots. You've had lots of controversy. And you got a 2-1 series right now that could very well go 7 games quite easily, I think.
Well, they are the most compelling in the most unusual way, because you have Jalen Brunson, who, while being a superstar, really isn't a household name. You have a team in the Knicks, which is like a college team in the way they play. The energy and the effort that they put out, and the teammates, the college teammates that are the core and nucleus of this team, it's such a unique story. But then jump over to the Pacers. It's the same thing. Tyrese Halliburton was brought into the league with expectations, but I wouldn't call them high expectations. I don't think anybody expected him to be a superstar, which he has become. The Canadian content with Ryan Nembhard, and Ryan had a great college career at Florida and Gonzaga. But again, I don't know what the expectations were for Ryan. Hit that shot last night, magical. So yeah, it's good. But all of the series are great, and we're going to touch on a little bit more on one of the other series, the Wolves and the Nuggets, in just a little bit. Before we jump to the WNBA names, I just have to remind everybody about 3x3 basketball. This summer, July 5th to the 7th, down at the Fan Park, we have our newest rendition of Hoop City 3x3. And this is just going to be off the charts. It's the final stop for many of the Olympic teams before they play in Paris, including Team Canada, who will be vying for a qualifying spot in the Paris Olympics next week in Debrecen, Hungary. So we have our Hoop City component, which is for your team, ages 9 to 90. Sign up no matter what your ability level is. You can play outdoors, and then you can go and watch the best teams in the world. And we just announced this week that we're going to have our first ever FIBA 3x3 Elite Quest division. And this is open to all players, but you have to be high level in order to do this, because the winner of the men's quest will go to Shanghai for a world tour event in September, and the winner of the women's event will go to Saskatoon to a women's series event. So sign your teams up today. Go to donorthevents.ca to register. And in the short term, the Rocky Mountain Hoops is a partner of ours at Hoop City 3x3. And they have a 3x3 tournament next weekend. Go to RockyMountainHoops.com or on Instagram at RockyMountain_hoops. $30 per person, 3 to 5 players on a team, U13, boys and girls, U15, U17. All players will earn points for their worldwide account for FIBA 3x3. Come and listen to a live DJ, Rick Stanley. Of course, everybody knows Rick in the basketball community. This is he and his partner Lon put together a great event every time they do something. So the Rocky Mountain Hoops 3x3 is coming up soon as well. So, Brian, what have we got for WNBA names in Toronto? And I'm still struggling to find one for myself, but I've got to come up with one.
We'll throw in a few options here for you, Paul. There are a lot of names floating around there, and thanks to everyone who hit us up on the Sports 1440 text line at 1-833-401-1440 this morning. I think some of the popular names we've heard out there so far are the Towers, kind of a play on or referencing the CN Tower, which of course is the big part of the Toronto skyline is one name that's been popular. The Pterodactyls or the T-Rex playing out the dinosaur theme is one. You like that's your choice right there, right, Paul?
Yeah, I'm all over that one.
There we go. The Toronto Pterodactyls. It rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
Yeah. Some of the other ones too, Toronto Huskies, paying homage, of course, to the original original Canadian NBA team that was in the inaugural NBA season. And the Six as well, which I think, I just think anything, that has any kind of relation to Drake whatsoever should probably just be removed from this conversation. I'll leave it at that. But those are some of the most popular options that are out there. I really like Towers. The Pterodactyls one is kind of it's
catchy.
It's catchy. I love the idea of the Huskies too. I'm not sure if this being a new women's franchise, if you want to maybe forge its own identity rather than referring back to an NBA franchise. But I do love the history behind that, and I've seen a lot of people have been on board with that one too. So it's going to be interesting.
What I like about the concept is the idea of taking the original NBA roots, which have led to the WNBA. So I see an opportunity for a crossover of history that doesn't often happen.
It's a great name, too, I think.
It is. Yeah. It really is. Connor, did you come up with yours?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was looking at some of the other names, and I love the Huskies. I love when the Raptors would wear the retro jerseys. I thought the white with the blue print was a very clean look. So if they went that direction, I think it'd be fantastic. I thought about alliteration, but just looking at the WNBA franchises, not a whole lot of that. Seattle Storm, kind of the only one that rolling with it. But I went back and looked at 1994 when the Raptors were looking at potential names.
Oh boy, I think I know where this is going.
All right.
They had some good ones, some that I don't think would fit, like Toronto Dragons, no, Grizzlies, but I'm going to stick with the Terriers. Terriers. Okay. I'm going to go with that one and see if it plays out, because I guess that was what team that was our name that was floated around originally. It goes with it, but now that you mentioned the Huskies, I think I might also be leaning that way.
Well, here's why I like the Huskies over the Terriers. I own a Terrier. I've owned 3 Terriers, and when I think of Terriers, I think of yappy, bratty little dogs. And so
that's the brand of basketball we're building.
Yeah, that's what I'm not sure you want that alliteration to be tied to that imagery, but I don't have an original name. I really, personally, from what you were describing, the Towers, but the CN Tower, I mean, I automatically, my thought goes to the Twin Towers, and that's not a good image. But I really like the Huskies. I think it's a great image. Huskies are wonderful dogs, and I just think that could really be built on myself. But it's going to be exciting to think of people being able to jump in and give their opinion for this new WNBA franchise, and that will be part of this whole lead up that's going to create so much excitement.
So if I'm hearing this right here, I don't have any seconds for the Pterodactyls.
I'm going to pass on it for right now. I just think it just creates real uniform problems, and I don't know how you come up with a shorter. Do you call them the tiles? Do you call them the DAX? Like, I just don't think it's going to work. And definitely keep the 6 out. Anything. Yeah. You know my feelings on
there we go.
That particular musical artist. Yes. And I'm really fond of the supposed battle in the media right now between rappers. That's always my favorite, is when that kind of nonsense happens. Let's talk about, briefly with the time we have left, the Timberwolves versus the Nuggets. Everyone, I think it's safe to say, was shocked that the Timberwolves rolled over Denver in Denver the way that they did, particularly Game 2 without Rudy Gobert. Now, Game 3 comes, and Brendan Malone has the team ready to go. Jamal Murray was Jamal Murray again. Jokic was Jokic again. But here's my point, and this is where I'd like your opinion on it. This, to me, was the imposition of one team's will on the other. And that was what I was curious about with the Wolves. How would they respond when this defending champion's will and pride came to the surface again and exerted itself? And it did last night. They were out of it almost from the tip-off. They never were in the game at all. Now, things can change from game to game. We know that. We expect that. What impact does this victory have, if any, Brian, on the next game?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we'd all pretty much, I think, had written the Nuggets off after that ugly Game 2 loss what Minnesota did to them in Denver. And what I kind of, and this isn't directly answering your question, Paul, but I think kind of ties into it, is what I found really interesting after Game 2 was they had 4 days, Monday to Friday, before getting back on the court for Game 3. A really extended break, and I was fascinated to see how that might affect one team or the other, and if it might benefit one team or the other. And maybe it didn't have any effect at all. But looking at just how Denver, and you're right, because Denver dominated that start finish. They never took their foot off the gas. Minnesota never had a chance of getting back into that game. And I just wonder if that might have killed some of the momentum and kind of gave Denver a chance to refocus and kind of rediscover their championship form. And now they found that. Denver, you would hope Denver does exactly what they did last night, because they can't afford, they're still down 2-1. They still need to get this series back even, right? 100%. Going back home. So, they cannot afford to take a break. So it'll be very interesting to watch.
Great series going on. Thank you, everybody who participated today with the poll results and the names. I'm just going to sign off with this. This is in dedication to my son, Ben, and our good friend, David, who passed away way too young. Be kind and assume the best about everyone. We don't know what our fellow man is going through, so always assume the best. Take energetic action every day and tell those important people in your lives that you love them. You can't say that too often. Everyone, thanks for joining us. Look forward to you joining us again next week. Have a great week on and off the court. This has been the Basketball Show on Sports 1440.